It can feel like such an amazing thing when we gain a new insight that helps us with our personal growth or our healing process. But unfortunately, that isn't enough to do the full growth and the full healing. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the difference between knowledge or insight, which is a very important first step, and the actual healing that you need to do. Hey everyone, I'm Sonia, and on this channel I give you relationship tips, attachment style healing advice, and other personal growth insights to help you live your most fulfilling life. And if you'd like to get on my free newsletter, there is a link down below. When you get on it, you will receive a free PDF with my checklist and worksheet that you can go through if you're feeling unfulfilled in your relationship or, just it's generally not going as well as you'd like. So back to today's topic. That difference between knowledge and that initial insight that we can have about something, which can feel kind of mind-blowing sometimes and is such an important, crucial first step for making any progress and for growth and for healing, but that isn't enough. It's not enough to change our ways. It's not enough to heal us. Let's talk a little bit about some of the ways this shows up so you can see the difference, what that real difference is between that insight level and the actual doing the work. So I'm going to frame this with a couple examples. So example number one is if you realize you're not feeling as good as you could be. So maybe it's that you are stressed out and you realize, oh, you suddenly have that insight that it's not just like, maybe it's come on gradually, for example, and you have that insight like this, hey, this isn't okay. I'm really not feeling well. Maybe you realize for the first time you're stressed out, or you realize that it doesn't need to be that way, that's not okay that you're not feeling good. So that's huge, right? It's huge to realize that you're sort of stepping out of your daily mindset of the grind in order to have that realization. It's big to have the realization also just because, we start to realize, oh, something needs to change. And so there's kind of a subconscious barrier to get through there to even realize that because, when we are, let's say, doing a lot, there's an advantage in a way, right, to suppressing it and not feeling like we have to make a big change, which might feel overwhelming. So just going with the feeling aspect of it, the feeling stressed out for this particular example, it's still not enough to realize that you physically aren't feeling well, maybe from stress or for whatever other reason, right? You need to actually be doing something about it. So similar to how if you realized you weren't feeling well, let's say you had low energy and you realized it was because of your diet or exercise, you would understand that you need to take steps in that regard. You absolutely need to take actual practical steps as well to feel better. Let's call it nervous system regulation in this case. So we'll use the example of stress, being stressed out versus and having your sympathetic nervous system more ramped up chronically versus having more nervous system regulation in place. So you would need to actually take those steps. So for example, maybe you would start to do a yoga practice. Maybe you would set a timer and start to do a mindfulness practice each day where you make sure to come into the present moment. Or maybe you would do some breath work to work on those brainwave states. All of those can be such important things to add into your life in general. I mean, I know I'm a breathwork practitioner and you can check out the link for that below as well. Really, the example here is to be taking it into the practical, into the actual steps from having a particular insight. So in this case, whether you would have some practices in place already or not, you would need to still be adding something in or making some practical change in order to address the stress that you have identified. All right, so let's use some other examples here so you can really see some of the ways this plays out between the knowledge level, the insight level, and actually practically doing personal growth and change and healing. So for example, number two, it's having the insight that, so maybe you're not stressed in this case, but you're having the insight that things just aren't going the way you want in life, whether that's dissatisfaction in your career, whether it's dissatisfaction with just how your daily life feels, whether it's a relationship, whatever that is, realizing that things aren't right. So again, that insight level is pretty big because, keeping things the same can feel less overwhelming in a lot of ways. So there is sort of a subconscious advantage to that in a certain way. So it's huge to make that realization, to actually understand that and see that. But it's still going to be a different thing to actually take steps to change it. And in this case, it probably feels extra overwhelming. How would one even go about doing that, right? Maybe that's why it hasn't been fully acknowledged before now. But just as a way to give you an example of what the practical might look like for this, number one, an important step would be then to take a needs inventory. Let's use the example of that your daily life just doesn't feel fulfilling or just feels off in some way. You would want to take a needs inventory and really understand what your needs are. And I can link to another video at the end of this one that talks about needs more. But I think the tricky thing here is that sometimes we're not acknowledging what our needs are. So sometimes we know we're not giving them to ourselves, we're not prioritizing them. And sometimes maybe it's something like we don't think that money should play a big role in someone's choices or something like that, because we have sort of an ideal around that. But we are someone who feels very unstable and insecure if we don't have enough money. So that would be a case where it would be necessary to really find out and acknowledge that need about money in order to then meet it. So I guess it's sort of a bridging step in a way, in order to allow you to take the big insight and make it into the practical steps. But that bridging part is also practical because you would really be doing a needs inventory, possibly writing it down, really going through it in detail and in depth. And then the second part of that is to get out of needing it to happen a certain way for certain things. This might, be really more obvious in terms of like a relationship, that you wouldn't necessarily know exactly what the person is going to be like or where you're going to meet them, and if you have a very idea of how that's going to happen. But it can work for other things too. It could work with like how the career change is going to happen. So it's kind of getting around an actual block you have because of expectations of how it would look if you do change. And again, that's a little outside the scope of this video, but I just wanted to mention it here because it can play in to this practical process of trying to transform the insight and then doing the practical step with the needs inventory, and then actually making some changes in your life around that. All right, example number 3 of taking that knowledge insight level that's so crucial and important to our change and growth and making it really practical so that we actually go through the growth and the healing journey is around a relationship that maybe is feeling unfulfilling, for example, or is just having some issues. And so I probably will do another video on this one as well to unpack it even further. But what I want you to see here is that just knowing that there's something going awry in the relationship is definitely not enough. And so the bridging insight here is to realize that you're both playing a role in the situation, because that's where the insight level can lead us to not be doing our own work with regard to it or making changes that will then shift the relationship dynamic. And so once you have that bridging insight, a really powerful practical first step is to really get down what your own role is and make the shifts. And to do that, you may have to so one way you could do it would be to just try to consider an interaction you had with your partner a little bit after. So definitely cool down. You're not feeling reactive anymore. So I don't know if that'd be a day later, a few days later, a few hours later. It'll be different for each interaction and each person. But you want to really go through it step by step, like it's playing out in front of you, and try to see what happened there. And, if that's even hard for you, because it can be hard still to see ourselves at all objectively, you could try to imagine that it's someone else, like it's a friend coming to you and telling you the play-by-play. So again, there's a practical bridging step there in sort of inventorying what your role is in the relationship dynamic, and then you can take those actual practical steps of changing what's happening. It's not enough to know that something's off in the relationship and then to just be trying to bring it up. That can be a piece of it, but you have to understand the practical changes you're going to make as well. And then finally, a fourth example for today about how to take insight or knowledge and make it practical, real change in your life is around habits. So it's very important to see and understand, oh, this has become a habit, or maybe, maybe it's not a healthy habit, or maybe it's disrupting my work. That's very important to have that insight and crucial. But in order to change the habit, you're going to have to it's not enough to just then say, okay, my willpower, because I have this insight, it's going to carry me through. Now I know. It's not enough to do that. So you really have to make practical changes around it to shift what's going on. In general, depending on the kind of habit, let's say you snack at a certain time of the day and always eat unhealthily then. it can be helpful to change up things around the habit, right? Because our brain links things. So not to go too far into the specifics of how to change a habit. There's a lot of books out there that talk about how to do this. It can be helpful to change, like you're not in that same place at that time of the day, for example. But what I want to talk about here, more related to attachment theory and my own training with integrated attachment theory and how to heal, is to address the self-sabotage aspect. And so what is that self-sabotage coming from if you try to make a change? Let's say you even try to make the change and you change where you are, but you still do it. You still creep back into that room and you still eat the cookies. It is to understand that if you're self-sabotaging, it's for a reason. It's not just, I don't have enough willpower. It's because you're not trying to meet the need that was underlying why you're doing that in a different way. So for example, if you were seeking comfort from the cookies at that time of the day, and that time of the day you need more comfort, you have to realize that that was the need going on there, and there could be several, and then be trying to meet it in a different way so that you can avoid having the self-sabotage. So hopefully giving those 4 examples shows you some of the different areas and different ways that can apply to, how having an insight is crucial and important to making change in our lives, but it's not enough. And there have to be these other steps, sometimes these bridging insights that are practical inventory kind of steps, and then taking the actual steps to do things differently in our lives that will make the change. It won't just come, it feels so powerful often when we have those moments of insight that it feels like it'll carry us through, but it can't without the practical steps as well. Let me know in the comments what you think about the content of this video, if you have any questions, and I would love to also hear what other kind of content you would be interested in hearing from this channel in the future.